Thank you. Well, I can say that we're all friends here, right? We're all here because we love React. It's part of our DNA. We built all these frameworks on top of it. And I firmly believe that every framework is good in its own right. We all bring something to the table. Rising tide lifts all boats. But we all have preferences in how we like to build our applications. We have opinions about what the developer experience should be like, how files should be organized, and what patterns are the most efficient. And with certain conventions and tools, we're able to move faster, not only individually, but also as a team. So let's break this down a little bit. First, let's talk about what we're building, an application. And applications are really about data. So we have CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. And that's really 90% of application development, right? Without the ability to fetch that data, we just have a static website. Now, I've been in the industry a long time. I started working at an agency in 2002, back when people still called us webmasters. I feel like that's from Star Wars. They would call me on the phone, and if they were really high-tech, I get an email that says, please make these changes to my website. I'd make the changes, and I'd use FTP to update the files on the server. Now, back then, times were much simpler, and it was still really fun to build, but now we have so many more tools at our disposal, and it's been amazing to see all the things that people have been able to build and what can actually be run within a web browser. But one thing that's common between then and now is that it's still all about the data. We want to take a set of data, we want to be able to view it, manipulate it, pivot it, filter it, and sort it. We make inferences and decisions based on that data. And I'd argue that's the core element of any application, the data. So when it comes to building an application, that's the piece that we care about. Fetching the data, grabbing it from a database or an API, and then doing something with that. So my name is Amy Dutton. I'm a lead maintainer on the RedwoodJS core team, and this is something that my team obsesses over. Redwood has been around for a while. It's 4 years old, so it's not a brand new project. We are co-founded by Tom Preston Warner, who also co-founded a little project called GitHub. Maybe you've heard of it. Or if you've used the extension TOML, he is also the Tom in TOML. So I'd say his track record is pretty good. We are an independent open source project, and it's sponsored by Preston Warner Ventures, so we are fully funded. Applications, startups that have built their projects on top of Redwood have raised over $100 million. One of our most successful applications is called Puzmo. And this was co-created by Orda. He started at Microsoft. He worked on the TypeScript team, and he left Microsoft to build Puzmo full-time. It was actually acquired by Hearst Publications. And since launching in October, they've had over 9 million games played, and right now they're averaging 1.5 million games per month. So now what's interesting about Redwood and what separates us from other JavaScript frameworks is that we are a full stack framework. And I know that term kind of gets thrown around a bit. What actually makes us full stack? Well, we ship with a database. And that data layer that I mentioned that's so important, we ship with that as first-class support. Now, historically, this has been within the context of GraphQL, but Redwood now supports React server components. And so this makes working with data even easier. And while we'll always continue to support GraphQL, you're no longer tied to GraphQL. And you can bring whatever backend or API you want to work with. So let's take a look at some code, because that's what we care about, and see Redwood's flavor of implementation and how this might vary from some of the other options that are available. So within Redwood, we have something that's called a cell. And a cell is something that's really unique to us, and one of the things that makes that Redwood Redwood. So generating a cell is very simple. You can just run yarn redwood generate cell sample, and in this case, sample is the name of the cell. Now, this will create a file that looks like what's on the slide, And if you're working with data, there's several pieces that you need to account for. So first, you have a query. You need to be able to fetch that data or query that data from the database. So in this case, this is a GraphQL query. You also have a loading state. So what gets displayed when the component is loading that data from the database? We also have an empty state. So what happens when it was successful, but no data was returned from that database? Or you also have a failure. We need to be able to see the error that came back from the server. And we also have a success component. And this gets displayed when everything is going according to plan. We want to see that content displayed. Now, you'll notice that these are all components. Redwood is smart enough to deliver the appropriate component depending on the result that it gets back from the database. So normally, you'd have to write a bunch of conditionals. Redwood handles all of that for you. Now, let's see how this changes with React Server components. So this is actually a server cell. And you'll notice at the top, we have a data component. And it's no longer using GraphQL. This is a Prisma call to the database that ships with Redwood. Then we still have a loading state, an empty state, a failure state, and a success state. And here, with the success state, it's displaying the products that get returned from the server. Now let's look at the router. And this is even more unique to Redwood. We have a single file called routes.js, or if you prefer TypeScript, routes.ts. And this file defines all of our application's URLs. This is a huge differentiator from other frameworks that use file or folder-based routing. Personally, this has become my favorite way to handle routing. Why? Well, with file and folder-based routing systems, your file organization is tied to your routes. If the route needs to change, then you need to move the files and folders around, which has the potential to break import paths. Or with a frat router, you're including layout details within your file and folder names, so now you're smushing two pieces of information into your file names. With Redwood's routes.js file, there's a single file with all the information that you need. The syntax also looks similar to JSX, which is something that you're probably already comfortable with. Now let's take a look at the first route component within this file. So we have a path attribute, and this specifies the URL that you want the page to use. We also have a page attribute, and this is the component that the user should see when they go to that URL. Then we also have a name attribute, and this is how you want to identify the route. And in my opinion, this is one of the best features about our router. As long as you reference the routes throughout the application using that name attribute, you can change your paths, that URL, all day long, and none of the links within your application will break. As a prime example, you'll notice a little bit further down, I have a login page. And right now it's set up to be /login. But if you wanted to change that to say /signin, you can make that change in a single place here within the routes file, and everything continues to work. So let's talk a little bit about handling layouts. Here I have my auth pages, login, sign up, forgot password, reset password, and accept and invite. And these elements are wrapped within a set component. And this has a wrap attribute that specifies the component that I want to use for my layout. And again, you aren't forced into a URL convention or a file naming convention based on what layout you want to use. Let's look at it one more kind of set component. So here I have a private set, and these are password-protected pages. That's right, authentication ships out of the box with Redwood. So here we have an unauthenticated attribute that will send the user to the login page if that user is not logged in. And just last week, we shared a blog post on our website explaining how auth works with middleware in Redwood. So Redwood has so many integrations out of the box. We just touched really on one, the data side, which includes databases, but it also has Storybook and testing built in. So it's easy to see all these tools that Redwood provides and say, hey, isn't this just a starter kit? Well, with starter kits, yes, they provide you with different ways to get started faster, but what happens when the library or tools upgrade? All that maintenance work, that falls to you. So Redwood handles all of your dependencies for you, so you don't have to. And upgrading is as simple as running a single command within the terminal, yarn redwood upgrade. So with that, I hope that you will all upgrade and take a look at Redwood. You can scan the QR code to get to go to a dedicated landing page for React Conf. And here you can find additional information about key differences between Redwood, Next, and Remix. You can also see some of the stuff that the team has been working on with React Server Components and SSR, including our roadmap. And if you're interested, I'd encourage you to sign up for our newsletter so that you can follow along. Thank you.